So many engineers say, I want to become a CEO, I want to become president of a company, I want to be an executive. What does it really take? Well, in today's episode of the Civil Engineering CEO, I have with me Tarolyn Buckles. Tarolyn is a civil engineer and a CEO of Onyx Enterprise, Inc., a company she founded and has grown. And what she's going to talk about in this episode is truly the journey to become a leader in engineering. What it takes from day one and how you can progress the right way to build those leadership skills, because sometimes we just see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. We want to be an owner, we want to be a partner, and people tell us to do certain things, but you don't really see the road and understand how to take it. But today, Tarolyn is going to take us down that road. But first, a word from our sponsor. Before we go on here, I'd like to recognize our sponsor for this episode, Tensar International.
Check out Tensar Plus, the award-winning design software for construction professionals to design with geosynthetics and calculate their value on projects. Tensar Plus is simple to use with a powerful engineering system at its core. Whether you're designing a crane pad or need to build a temporary road over muck, the cost, time, and carbon savings can be calculated, making comparison with alternatives simple. Whatever you're working on, Tensar Plus is your toolbox for success.
All right, now I'm excited to welcome our guest onto the show for today. Tarolyn Buckles is the president and CEO of Onyx Enterprise, Inc. Tarolyn, welcome to the Civil Engineering CEO.
Thank you, Anthony. Happy to be here.
So Tarolyn, we're happy to have you. Let's start off by maybe you could tell us a little bit about your company, where you're located, the type of services you provide, about how many employees you have.
Sure. So Onyx Enterprise, we're headquartered in Detroit. We're located on the north end of the city, just north of the Fisher Building on 2nd Avenue. We've been headquartered in Detroit now for 16 years, and the company is growing. We offer civil engineering and construction services to our clients locally. So we have an office here in Detroit. We have an office in Atlanta and Cleveland, and we're about to open an office in Tampa.
Wow, that's great. That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I believe you went undergraduate, you went to Michigan for civil engineering, but tell us about, your career progression and how how everything unfolded here.
Absolutely. And I like to tell my story because I always wanted to be an engineer, even at the age of 10 years old, participated in programs in Detroit. There was one program that stood out while I was growing up, and that's Detroit Area Pre-College Engineering Program, DAPSEP. And I was in that program when I was 10 years old. And I knew at that time that I wanted to be an engineer. I was good in math and science, and I love the arts too. And so it wasn't until high school when I decided to be a civil engineer. And at that time, I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to do architectural engineering. And it wasn't until MDOT, Michigan Department of Transportation, came to my high school. I went to the Detroit Public Schools, Murray Wright High School. And that's where I learned that, I could be an engineer and work with architects. And so working with MDOT for some summers, I said, I believe this is for me. Because it was hands-on type of construction, and even got a chance to work in some design departments too. So that was my journey starting off, even while growing up. And when I went to University of Michigan in civil engineering, a graduate in structural engineering, Bachelor's of Science, and I decided that MDOT, I've learned a lot, but I wanted to change pace and see the other sides of civil engineering. Everything from transportation, engineering, which I've had that experience with MDOT. I wanted to work in some environmental, and which was a totally different change of space for me. I took that off ramp pretty much and went into worked with waste management. And that was good for me because I've learned so many aspects of civil engineering from the environmental perspective. Everything from, and I worked with waste management in 2 landfills, a hauling company and worked closely with engineering consulting firms for landfill design of my landfills. Everything from waste collection, is non-hazardous waste approvals. And I was a corporate auditor for safety, environmental health and safety. And I completed all the permits for the different landfills in a hauling company. So that prepared me for the work that I'm doing in a consulting arena right now. So I was with Waste Management for about 5 years and decided I wanted to go on the private side, go back in this case, I wanted to get back home to Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I was living in Grand Blanc and the Flint area. That was where my landfills was in the Flint area, and also Port Huron. And so going back to Detroit, working into a field where I love, and to have that diversity in civil engineering. I went with a consulting firm. At that time, it was called Finkbeiner Pedersen Strout, FPS, which was later acquired by Arcadis. Arcadis is an international engineering firm. And
Sure.
so, yes, and so we had an office in downtown Detroit, and it was amazing. I worked on so many interesting projects, from Detroit Water and Sewer projects, City of Detroit, the various departments. And I progressed and really got a chance to see all sides of civil engineering. So it was a perfect move for me. And I was promoted several times as a young engineer, helping out in a small office. We were able to make sure that I get exposed to different projects, with working with water treatment plants, wastewater treatment plants, and it was amazing. And that's where I got my start pretty much in working on a consulting side, helping the office get all the permits, as far as the certifications, excuse me, and being certified, headquartered in Detroit. I also did a lot of client relations. And it was at that time where I decided, I said, maybe I should look into opening up my firm. And I had good mentors that had their own engineering firm in civil engineering, mind you. I had met one civil engineer. She's a PhD civil engineer while I was working with MDOT. And
Wow.
she left and started her own company. So that was 20 years prior to that. And I said, you know what? If she can do it, I can do it too. Yes.
That's awesome. That's great. I mean, it sounds to me like a key to your success has been getting like varied experience and a lot of hands-on experience throughout your career, where you were, whether in the field or just actually doing projects, doing a lot of work. Like, would you say that that was a big boost for you?
Absolutely. And it happened while I was 19 years old when I started with MDOT, and it's in construction. And at that time, I inspected everything from roadway construction, stormwater, drainage facilities. I was on a survey crew. I led or managed a on-site material testing, so concrete testing, aggregate. So it was a on-site plant pretty much for the I-75 South reconstruction. And to have a young person take that lead, it really gave the confidence that I needed, and also apply that in my studies, as far as material testing. And as far as the inspection, completing those IDRs, inspectors' daily reports, being very detailed in their reporting, for quantities, and even doing density, it was just amazing experience, and it prepared me for what I'm doing right now. I mean, MDOT is one of my top clients, and so it's a full circle. And I have 10 employees, and half of them are working on construction inspection services.
Wow, that's awesome. And I think that what you highlighted there is a really important aspect of anyone's career progression in civil engineering, which is, building up that confidence to be able to take the next step in your career. And I've found, and I've said this many times on the podcast and other shows, is you need to push yourself a little bit early on in your career to do some things that are uncomfortable, which, like you said, getting out there in the field. I'm sure it can be very intimidating,
Oh, yeah.
19 years old,
Yes.
like you mentioned. But if you can do that and push yourself and then have success with that, you're going to build up confidence and build up momentum to be able to do other things in your career, like for you, Onyx, of course, starting it, building it up, which is not an easy thing to do. And I would imagine that all of those past experiences gave you the confidence to be able to take that leap.
Absolutely. Both the verbal and written. And it was just very good experience because even at a young age, I mean, to be able to communicate effectively in the field, and this is what I tell my young engineers all the time, is that you have to make sure that you communicate well. And that is, and for young people, they're, different now, they have more devices
Hmm.
and, computers and all those things. But 35 years ago, we didn't have the laptops and things of that sort. So we had to make sure everything was written, in the field and making sure you communicate that. And now that you have these devices, you can complete reports even faster now.
Yeah.
So communicating effectively is important. Everything from nonverbal skills, that's important as well. As far as your body language and how you're working in the field, and especially with older uh, employees. And that's what I had to find out too early too when I was 19 years old, is that, you're there for a reason. Be confident and know that you're qualified to do the work, and that respect is gained. It is definitely it's definitely one of those situations where and I had this experience with one of my young civil engineers, where they tried to dismiss her because she was young,
Sure.
basically, things that she would recommend in the field. And I could definitely relate to that. And I mentioned to her, well, it's time for definitely to have a meeting with them and just to go through and all of your background experience. And sure enough, things changed out in the field. He respected her more, based on her experience, not just because she looks young or anything of that, sort. So we had to garner that respect early. And that's key as well for working with generational, different employees from different backgrounds or experience.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that that's absolutely the case. I mean, my wife is a civil engineer as well, and I know that, just being a woman in the industry, I mean, we've gotten a
Yes,
little bit better, but still the numbers are obviously more male than female in the
yes,
industry. And then to your point, a young female now in the field
yeah.
even makes it, even more intimidating. And I would also say that going back to your point about, this generation or the next generation, I was just talking not too long ago with an executive of a big engineering firm. And one of the things with the recent graduates is that there are technologies out there today that obviously can make things easier and better, but at the same time, with the devices, like you mentioned, they're lacking the people interaction and those communication skills when they come out of school. So it's almost like if you're hiring recent graduates now, you have to really make sure that you're trying to expose them to the right social interactions and helping them build up those skill sets, because they are still critical, as you know, to get out there and present projects and meet people and meet clients.
Yes.
But because they just do more work on devices or spend more time on devices, they spend less time interacting with people one-on-one, which I think is something that we obviously need to be aware of. But the other thing I wanted to ask you was, we talked about your career progression. We talked about, some of the successes you had, but I'm curious about when you started Onyx. You had the civil engineering background at that point. You had all the experience that you talked about building up and the confidence, MDOT and doing different things. But how about the idea of now the business side of things, where you're starting a business and then you have the finance side of things? Kind of what gave you the confidence to say, okay, I could do engineering really well, but I also think I could start a business? Because there's like two sides of that. How did you kind of deal with the finance side of things?
The finance is the most important portion of the business outside of the employees, of course. I rank the employees, the HR area of the company extremely important. Making sure you have those systems in place, for the employees, making sure that they are being trained. You have all of the different benefits, and the financials is extremely important. So what I made sure I did, as just coming out the gate. starting my business, of course, having the business plan, but making sure I have a really excellent accountant, and an accountant is with me all aspects of the business. So that's for the business development side, the monthly financials that I have to review every month, the accounts receivables, the accounts payables. And you know what really prepared me is being a project manager. Being a project manager of some major projects really prepared me in managing the day-to-day, making sure that invoices and accounts receivables, all those things were paid. But when I started the company in 2007 and later just launching it full time, it was important for me to make sure I had systems in place. And as for anyone that's in business, you have to make sure that your accounting systems are in place. How are you tracking your invoices and your accounts receivables and your accounts payables? And it was a learning experience that I can say right now I can see the progression and my profits, because my profits for a small business in the consulting side, and they're ranging from 20 to 40% net profits, because I'm very lean
Wow.
in working the work that I do. And that's attributed to, how I'm proposing and bidding on the work, making sure that uh, my employees are paid very well, but making sure that I have a proposal from the point of not just, executing the work, but also the financials, making sure that we win the work, but we are profitable. And that's key for a business, because at the end of the day, it does come down to your revenues and your net profits and how you're operating your business. And that's something that I've learned. And that's just really good project management, and it's really making sure you have a team in place, your accountant, your attorney, and your financial advisor. I have a financial advisor today that I've had for about 5 years now. And prior to that, I've had about maybe two or three. But this financial advisor I have is definitely longstanding, because he gets every aspect of my business.
Hmm.
And he's involved in not just the financial wealth management, as far as your stocks and bonds, but also the trust that I put together. I put together a trust for the company. Actually, I have three different companies, and I have it under a trust under Legatum Vitae. That's the name of the trust, which is translated from Latin, meaning living a legacy. And so I have my three companies under that, and that's the level I think is extremely important for small businesses. And it's a protection layer too for you as well, to have your business within a trust. And we can talk about that as well.
Interesting. That's great. It sounds like you really embrace it. And it sounds like the key there is a really good team, have that accountant, have your financial advisor, have a lawyer that you
Yes.
can consult with on a regular basis as the company grows. And to that point, Onyx Enterprise is a growing firm. Can you talk a little bit about kind of your growth strategy and where you see your firm going over the next 5 years or so?
Yes, and I'm smiling because the growth of the company, we're 16 years old, and I could see the progression of the firm, from civil engineering and construction. And we have so many different lines of new business. And I've partnered with my colleague with my other firm, which is AE Collaborative, which is an architecture and engineering firm. We launched the company in 2019. So this firm is focused on the vertical space. So anything building related. So the architectural, the mechanical, MEP and plumbing, the structural engineer. I'm a structural engineer by degree, but having that team of licensed professional engineers, the architects as well, licensed architects together working on projects is really exciting. And so that's the growth that's coming from that line of business. We're getting ready to open an office in Florida, in Tampa as well. And I have another company just launched in December of 22, which is Green Energy Innovations, which is electric vehicle charging stations and solar. And I believe it fits in perfectly, with the work that I'm doing in the infrastructure space. And so that's leading to a whole nother line of business as far as the infrastructure needs for EV, for charging stations, and for solar. So the company is growing, of course, in the infrastructure space with roadways, bridges. We're working from different areas of transportation. We have 3 projects at the Metro Detroit Airport. We have projects on the water side with water resources, with Detroit Water and Sewer, and also Great Lakes Water Authority. And we have projects with Detroit Public Works, so sidewalks, the HMA paving, and we have 6 projects with MDOT, Michigan Department of Transportation, working on major freeways and bridge projects. So I-94, I-69, the 8 Mile project, I-75. Wow. Yeah, it's just amazing. We have that breadth of experience in every line of the civil engineering, including on the environmental side as well. Now, the building space, Onyx is working on some Detroit Public Schools projects. So we're on a team, on a program management team. I'm really proud of this project because it's Detroit Public Schools, schools that I attended.
Right.
And I'm really excited about that. We're helping on the demolition side and commissioning side. So we're on a program management team overseeing other architects and engineers.
That's awesome. Lots of growth happening with your companies.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that, civil engineering and entrepreneurship go together very well, right? Because of the industry that we're in, because of the infrastructure. We need entrepreneurs in the civil engineering space like yourself that are doing what we need to do to serve the community and kind of help the country continue to improve infrastructure and grow and expand in the right ways, which is awesome. But let me ask you another question about yourself. How would your staff, do you think, describe your management style if we ask them?
The staff would say that I am definitely a hands-off. I don't micromanage. I hire leaders. I want a engineer, when they come on board, to really embrace all aspects of the project. So if they're a civil engineer, I really want them, of course, get trained in all the things that they need to work on that project. So if they're doing, site civil design, or if they're in the construction engineering space, I really would like for them to take that lead. And of course, the communication is key for a small business. We're very lean. And so the communication aspect of it, we're checking in every day. But as far as running the project, even though we're sub, we're treating it as if it's our project. Or if we're prime, we're having all aspects of it. So from the budget, the scope, the schedule, all aspects of it. So I would say they would probably describe me as wanting the details, but expecting excellence. And that is excellence in making sure we're communicating effectively, we're completing our projects on time and our tasks, and really giving them all the resources they need to be the best. So they're trained on all the different softwares. And in civil engineering, softwares change it seems like every couple of years, and I invest in that in my employees. I do, and I make sure that they get that training. So that's an expense that I take on, and making sure they are equipped.
That's great. It sounds, Tarolyn, like you're very, hands off, but of course you have those expectations and you check in with your team members. The CEO is really, responsible for guiding the strategic trajectory of their firm or firms, in your case, different companies. So how do you do that? Is it having these conversations with your leaders? Like, how do you focus on the big picture and the trajectory and the growth of the firms? What does that look like for you in terms of process or actions you take?
Excellent question. And One question that I get asked a lot as far as, how you run your business, but you want to make sure that you're not being too involved in a day-to-day, but you're looking on the growth of the company. And I was fortunate to participate in several small business programs, the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business, the Emerging Leaders program here in Michigan, and several other uh, business focused programs. And I've learned so much from these programs, not only just to have a business plan, but in a plan that just basically sit, on the shelf. You put that plan together 1 year, and it's the same plan that you keep for, several years. Uh, and that's not the case with my company. And actually all three. I do have a business coach, and it's a coach that I've used through different programs. And this one here is called Focus 4. It takes elements of the book Traction,
Hmm.
and you focus on the business, every aspect of the business. And so having that business coach really keeps my frame of reference, looking forward of the growth aspects of the company and what are you doing to meet those goals. So you have an accountability not only to yourself and to your employees, but you have an outside business coach that's keeping you to task.
That's great.
That
That's awesome.
is amazing for me. And I've had this business coach in different aspects of the company. And I can think back for about, I would say about 10 years ago, I did have someone in that role as well. And now I have it for both of my companies. And that's critical. So if you don't have that business coach, being involved in different programs, like I'm in a mentor we program through a Stellantis, uh, which is an amazing program, and it's for women in business. And just the executive coaching that we're getting through that process of it's a 6 month program. Those are programs that's keeping me to task, where I'm constantly focused on the growth of the business or new market areas, or what can I do to improve different areas of the business. And that's keeping our businesses, all three of my businesses, I believe, focused, trying different new technologies, uh, looking at best practices from my peers. And I find that the business to business or peer, learning from your peers is a definitely is a win-win for all of us.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, I think having a business coach, I mean, obviously, what we've heard from you really throughout this interview is the people that you surround yourself are really important as a business owner, especially in the civil engineering world, the financial advisor, the accountant, your lawyer, you got a business coach, and Traction is great. Traction's a great book by Gino Wickman, and we use the
Yes,
Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS,
that's
here
EOS.
in EMI, and it's very
Great.
popular among small businesses as well. So it sounds like all that is going in the right direction. I want to ask you one last thing before we wrap up here, and I want to talk a little bit about your passion for STEM, and how you get involved in STEM activities. I know you mentioned even for you that it was a visit by the DOT that really inspired you to become a civil engineer. Talk a little bit about your passion for STEM and how you get involved.
Yes. And it's a fabric of my company because we're involved in so many different community programs. But I can say, if you were to talk with my employees, that we always have either an intern or a student or a young engineer, brought in through the year. In this case, this year alone, I've hired 4 young civil engineers, and 3 are from historically Black universities, and bringing them into the state of Michigan because they're from different states.
Uh-huh.
So that's exciting for me. And so the progression of STEM programs, I believe it extends back again when I was young, and I knew the change it made in my life of being involved in different programs, even in high school, going to, different universities and experiencing the campus and learning about engineering and science. And so I pour myself personally into the lives of others because of the experiences that I had growing up and having some really good mentors along the way. And so that's the love that I have. It's the fabric of our company. As I mentioned, everything that we do, we're always looking to see how can we reach students that are not exposed to civil engineering or engineering in general. So I speak at different high schools. I am a board member with the civil engineering department at the University of Michigan. I just actually I've served on, in two, maybe three terms in the civil engineering board. And it involved a lot of engagement with the students on campus. And in Detroit, with the Detroit Public Schools, talking with students, I had a meeting with some uh, young people that they're interested not only in engineering, but just entrepreneurship, and just letting them see that it is possible to start your business. And we come from the same background. They're from Detroit, and one was from the east side of Detroit, which is where I'm from. Just to see someone that has started their businesses, and that was just life changing for her as well. And that's the impact that I want, is to take that the time out of my day, which is extremely busy, but it really helps me as well. That's my fuel, my passion is, and that's when I wake up every day and see who can I be in this case, be of service and let them know more about engineering. And believe it or not, it gives energy not only to me, but my staff and everyone that we come in contact with, even our clients, because they see that commitment that we have, and the goals that we have for the company. And
That's
these goals,
awesome.
yes, the goals are real. And it has definitely led to a lot of accolades, a lot of awards. The awards are great, and it is a testament of our hard work.
Yeah, for sure. And I hear all the time from firms that the biggest challenge is hiring civil engineers because there isn't enough of them. But I don't, there's not enough firms and leaders in the industry doing what you're doing, which is getting out there and creating more engineers, right? Getting people interested in it. So it's great to see you doing that. I think it's a huge benefit to give back to the community in this way, and to civil engineering as well, because it's a great profession. And I think if more kids knew about it and knew what civil engineers do, then they would be more inclined to take that career path. So that's awesome that you do that. Well, Tarolyn, I want to thank you so much for spending some time with us here on the Civil Engineering CEO. I know how busy you are with your multiple companies and everything that you're doing in the community. Once again, Tarolyn Buckles, President and CEO of Onyx Enterprise. Tarolyn, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Anthony. I really appreciate it. And let me know if you'd like me to come back again.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Tarolyn. I always love talking to civil engineers who are also entrepreneurs, because when you marry those two, I think amazing things happen. You can see what she's doing in growing kind of a suite of companies around the infrastructure and energy worlds, which is going to give a lot of opportunities to the people that she works with and the communities that she works in. If you like the video, please consider subscribing to our channel here. We put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineers become better managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.